In the quiet village of KwaMashu, nestled just north of Durban in South Africa, lived a humble farmer, a middle-aged South African man with deep-set brown eyes, dark skin, a square jaw, and short, tightly coiled black hair. He often wore a sun-faded khaki shirt, rolled-up sleeves, and dusty brown trousers tucked into worn rubber boots. His small maize farm barely produced enough to feed his family, yet his heart overflowed with generosity. Each morning, as this South African farmer walked the dusty path to his fields, he would pass an elderly woman sitting quietly on a wooden crate beneath a maula tree. The woman had wrinkled dark skin, high cheekbones, silver-grey short curly hair tied in a scarf, and wore a faded patterned dress with a tattered wool blanket wrapped around her shoulders. Her legs were visibly deformed, twisted at the knees, making walking impossible. She never begged, only stared into the horizon with a distant, thoughtful gaze. The villagers simply called her Granny, though none knew her real name. While others passed her by with indifference, the farmer always looked her in the eyes, really looked, acknowledging her humanity in a way few others did. Though he had so little, the man saw something more in her, not just a crippled stranger, but someone who mattered. And that simple act of seeing her made all the difference. Every day, the middle-aged South African farmer with dark skin, short coiled hair, and deep-set brown eyes made it a point to bring a small offering of food to the elderly, crippled South African woman beneath the maula tree. Whether it was leftover pap wrapped in cloth, a few ripe guavas, or a small bundle of boiled mealies, he always gave a portion of what little he had. The elderly woman, with her sun-worn face and soft, toothless smile, always accepted the food with gentle gratitude. Sometimes she would whisper a quiet blessing, "Bless you, son," her voice raspy but full of warmth. At home, the farmer's wife, a middle-aged South African woman with almond-shaped eyes, smooth brown skin, long black braids wrapped in a headscarf, and a sturdy build, looked at him with confusion. Wearing a simple blue cotton dress and apron, she stirred a pot of maize meal as she questioned his choices. "We barely have enough for our children," she said, frowning as she placed bowls on a wooden table. "Why feed a stranger?" The farmer, still wearing his dusty work clothes and sitting near the doorway, replied with quiet conviction, "She may not be our blood, but she's someone's mother. If we don't help her, who will?" As time passed, hushed voices spread through the village of KwaMashu. Neighbors, gathered by wells and under trees, exchanged suspicious glances and murmured doubts about the farmer's strange devotion to the crippled woman. "Thabo must be cursed," one woman muttered as she pounded maize outside her hut. "Why waste food on a crippled woman who can't even say her name?" But the middle-aged South African farmer, with his calm eyes and weathered face, paid them no mind. He walked past the gossipers each day, his arms full of maize or fruit, offering his quiet kindness without seeking approval. One afternoon, rain poured relentlessly from the sky. The maula tree dripped with water, and beneath it, the frail woman sat shivering, her thin shawl soaked through and her body trembling from the cold. Without hesitation, the farmer rushed to her. Ignoring the mud and chill, he gently lifted her in his strong arms and carried her through the rain, his feet splashing through puddles on the red earth. Inside his warm hut, lit by the glow of a small fire, the farmer dried her feet and wrapped her in a dry blanket. His children, curious and wide-eyed, gathered nearby, watching in silence. That night, she spoke more than she ever had before. Her raspy voice broke the silence as she said, "You have a kind soul. One day, your kindness will be remembered." The farmer simply smiled, his eyes reflecting the quiet satisfaction of a man who needed nothing in return. One crisp morning, as the sun rose gently over KwaMashu, the middle-aged South African farmer walked down the familiar dirt path, a warm cloth-wrapped bundle of pap in his hands. But as he neared the maula tree, his steps slowed. The crate was empty. There was no sign of the elderly South African woman. Her worn blanket, her crate, even the small stones she kept neatly arranged around her, all gone, as if she had vanished into thin air. The farmer stood silently, searching the surroundings with furrowed brows. He asked a passing neighbor if she had seen the old woman, but the neighbor only shook her head with a puzzled look. Days turned into weeks. The middle-aged man went from home to home, asking villagers if they had seen the frail woman with the twisted legs. No one had answers. Some shrugged. Others avoided the topic altogether. Rumors floated through the air. Some whispered that she had died in the night, her soul returning quietly to her ancestors. Others believed she had been taken away to a shelter in the city, far from the village life. As the seasons changed, the memory of the old woman began to fade for many. Children no longer looked toward the mayula tree with curiosity. Even the gossip died down. But for the humble farmer, her absence left a quiet ache in his heart. Almost a year later, the quiet of the rural South African village was shattered by the arrival of a sleek convoy of black luxury cars that rolled through the dirt road into the heart of the settlement. Dust clouds swirled as children and elders emerged from their homes to watch the strange procession. From the lead vehicle stepped a tall elderly South African woman, around 75 years old, with rich brown skin and regal posture. She wore a flowing cream-colored silk dress, gold earrings, and carried a polished silver cane. Her short grey afro was neatly styled, and her eyes, once weary, now gleamed with confidence and dignity. She paused, scanning the gathering crowd, and then asked in a clear voice, "Where can I find a middle-aged South African farmer with dark skin, a weathered face, and a graying beard, wearing a faded green shirt, brown trousers, and a straw hat?" From the back of the crowd stepped a man in his late 40s, with deep-set eyes and a humble demeanor. He wore his usual faded work clothes, a green shirt, brown pants, and his worn straw hat. Dust clung to his boots as he approached cautiously, eyes full of wonder. The elderly woman smiled warmly as recognition dawned on both their faces. "You knew me as the crippled old woman under the mayula tree," she said. "My real name is Zanil Dlamini." Gasps rippled through the villages. The name Zanil Dlamini wasn't unknown. She was the reclusive billionaire behind a global humanitarian foundation. But none could imagine that the silent, frail woman once seated beneath the mayula tree had been her all along. Standing tall before the silent crowd, the elegant 75-year-old South African woman with short grey afro hair, rich brown skin, and a silk dress leaned gently on her silver cane as she began to speak. Her voice was calm but powerful, weaving through the village air like music. She shared how, years ago, her life had been shattered by tragedy at a plane crash that took her husband and children. The grief drove her into seclusion. She had wandered, broken, until she ended up in KwaMashu, sitting alone under the mayula tree, hiding her identity and waiting for the world to live again. "No one saw me," she said, her voice quivering. "No one cared. I was invisible, until a humble farmer with a weathered face and deep eyes saw me as a person. He fed me with love, even when he had little." The middle-aged South African farmer with a graying beard and humble eyes looked down, uncomfortable with the attention. He clutched his straw hat in his hand as the woman reached for him with her free hand and gently held it. "As of today," she continued, "I am giving you 20 hectares of fertile farmland, new farming equipment, and a full scholarship fund for all your children. Your kindness will grow more than maize, it will grow a legacy." Years later, the once struggling farm was now a thriving green expanse. Rows of maize stretched across the fertile land, tended by the same middle-aged South African man with a weathered face, graying beard, and calloused hands, though now with newer tools and more helping hands. The man's children, now older, walked with books in their arms, heading to university. Dressed in clean uniforms, they waved goodbye to their parents near the farm gate, their faces bright with hope and promise. The village of KwaMashu had changed. It now had a small clinic, a water pump, and better roads. But at the heart of it all remained the same. The Marula tree still stood at the crossroads, a symbol of silent strength. Every year, on the same day, the middle-aged South African farmer returned to the tree at sunrise. His clothes still simple, his straw hat slightly worn, he placed a plate of food beneath the tree and sat in silence for a while, remembering. Though he now had more than he ever dreamed, he never let the wealth change him. His heart remained rooted in humility, the same heart that once saw a crippled stranger not as a burden, but as a fellow soul in need.